Flight crew, prepare for landing.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Austin.
Since the 1990s, Austin has evolved from a small city into a thriving urban center.
David Bucks Kemper from Yanovo, Ecological.
Thousands are attracted each year by its distinctive charisma, vibrant cultural landscape, and intellectual energy. But Austin's singular nature experience is what truly sets it apart. Barton Springs, a natural spring-fed pool, is Austin's most iconic natural landmark. But it's connected to something wilder and more expansive. Barton Creek, a natural oasis that snakes through the heart of a growing urban area.
We're very fortunate to have this virtually unspoiled natural area. I mean, right now, we're right here in the middle of the city, and it looks like we're not. It looks like we're in the wilds.
Barton Creek embodies the values of the city and the people and what makes Austin so critically special and important.
I love it. You know, everyone that comes out here is always, happy, enjoying themselves.
Hearing the nature, smelling it, that sweet Austin smell, and just all of the green, it just kind of resets.
Barton Creek Wilderness Park is not just 1,000 acres of parkland. It can allow a person to be in wilderness. It's an important word, wilderness.
When I see people walking on the Greenbelt, whether they moved here yesterday or 20 years ago, they're not aware of the effort it took.
Do you know the story of how the Barton Creek Greenbelt came to be?
No.
Like the way back in the original? Yeah, I have no clue.
I don't know the story, but I love it. I appreciate it, but I don't know the history.
I've been here living for more than 20 years, but I don't know the full story about it.
I know nothing. Nothing.
Maybe some guy named Barton, perhaps.
I think what's important is that when they do hear that story, and people realize it's even more special. It took this huge effort. It didn't just happen. It could have gone the other way.
The story of Barton Creek begins with its ecosystem, which has sustained life for millennia, and where today scientists study its unique flora and fauna.
We've seen in our survey areas over 100 so far today.
Oh, wow. Very cool. Well, I hope you continue to have a wonderful time searching for this rare flower. What is it called?
Bracted twist flower.
Bracted twist flower.
And there's like a lavender little four-petaled flower.
I found a nest 2 days ago. There's a female golden cheek warbler. The female does all the building.
The plants and animals of the Barton Creek watershed are sustained by a distinctive and complex hydrogeologic system.
Barton Creek is special because it creates the largest watershed in the Austin area. It goes for 30 miles into the hill country. It is water that flows on the surface, but underneath it, there's an underground river called the Edwards Aquifer.
through the caves and fissures. The springs that come out there under the diving board at Barton Springs Pool, that's the outflow from the Edwards Aquifer. Barton Creek and all the creeks are inextricably related. They're connected.
Other than being beautiful, Barton Creek is almost an artery like we have in our bodies, providing life-giving resource for our whole community.
But it was Barton Creek's unparalleled beauty that made it most vulnerable. Beginning in the 1970s, developers began to transform the land along the bluffs for high-end homes. Closer to town on Barton Creek, the city's own Public Works Department blasted through the creek bed, burying sewer pipes to accommodate the growth.
In the years between 1980 and 1985, the population of Austin, Texas grew by 40%, almost overnight in 5 years.
Investors saw the opportunity not only to build houses overlooking Barton Creek, but also to provide shops and services nearby.
Big out-of-town mall developers were like, yeah, we need to have 1 million square feet of mall out there, so that needs to be flat, so they had to flatten that hill. And when they went out there and they bulldozed the site for the Barton Creek Mall, everybody just shuddered and said, oh my God, if that keeps going, everything out here is going to be ruined.
When they started construction on the Barton Creek Mall, the sediment during a rain event ran down into Barton Creek and down into the pool, and the pool was milky white. They had to close it, and it happened more than once. I saw the pool change. I mean, I started swimming there as a baby, so it really had changed in the 1980s when they started building Barton Creek Mall.
Then Texas Department of Public Safety, TxDOT, were deciding, hey, we need to have Loop 360 go over Barton Creek, and we need to have MOPAC go over Barton Creek. And people were starting to go, but wait, this is a pristine wilderness area. We need to be careful about how we do that.
Because of the sinkholes and the caves and that water flowing above ground, underground, above ground, underground, there's no way to protect that water once you put development on top of that.
As people began to see the water quality being compromised and seeing how much land was being used for concrete and buildings, that got our attention.
And then in 1990, there was a proposed development, the Barton Creek Planned Unit Development, right on Barton Creek. And the word got out immediately.
This is the hill country west of Austin. But imagine 3.3 million feet of commercial and industrial space here, 2,500 houses and 1,900 apartments here, and 3 golf courses here. That's what developers are proposing, but environmentalists have been protesting for weeks.
Excuse me, can I get you to take one of these? It's about a threat to Barton Creek.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I was a young activist and wanted city council to turn them down and run them out of town.
The Austin City Council was set to vote on the massive Barton Creek development at its usual Thursday meeting.
And the votes were there to approve it. We really thought that they were going to approve. We put the word out. You got to come to City Hall. More than 800 people signed up to speak. The fire marshal and others were trying to maintain order inside City Hall, but it was pretty crazy. CEO of the company, Jim Bob Moffitt, I think he truly believed that his development would not impact the creek.
We have done everything to ensure the safety of Barton Creek. And as a geologist, I will promise you, I know more about Barton Creek than anybody in this room.
Excuse me.
There was not a person in the room, maybe other than the developer and his people, that really felt a sense of urgency, felt like that if we didn't do something, it's going to be lost. There was that collective feeling. I mean, it felt like it was saving a family member, save Barton Creek.
So I want to urge you, please, not to vote for this PUD the way it is, but to send out a message that Austin is a city that we love, and we want to keep it the way it is, and we will fight for it.
I will not vote for anyone who supports the development of Barton Springs Recharge Zone ever.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to get angry about this, but I am. And I've never been down here before, and I will come down here every time they're up here again.
Call the roll. Councilmember Knopfsugar? Yes.
In the wee hours of June 8, 1990, exhausted citizens held their breath as one by one the council members voted to deny the Barton Creek planned unit development.
Councilmember Humphrey? Yes.
Voices of those opposed to development above Barton Springs have been heard all the way to Hollywood. Today, movie star Robert Redford came to town to help the Save Barton Creek Association raise some money.
The reason I'm here is it is personal. And it's only when it becomes personal and we realize that we have some voice in our future that I think the real work gets done.
The call to save the creek and the springs drew nationwide attention, but it would be up to Austin's grassroots to figure out the next steps. After the all-night hearing, the community came together to strategize.
Stand up and be counted on this thing. They're either with us or they're against us.
We realized that Barton Creek was very, very fragile, and we knew there'd be more development applications.
A lot of work to get that together.
By 1990, Barton Creek was on borrowed time.
In my mind, it was, what can I do to help save Barton Creek?
Butch Smith was a wilderness specialist and Parks Department senior planner who was responsible for maps and data.
Butch, I think, decided that he could take a risk to be an advocate beyond just a technician or beyond just a mechanical functionary in a typical bureaucracy, a Parks Department, that was unusual.
At this critical moment, Butch Smith found an ally in Beverly Griffith.
Some might say they conspired.
I knew Beverly Griffith because she was chair of the Parks Board, so we had a lot of collaboration together.
Beverly possessed a passion for parks, a populist spirit, and a steadfast resolve to make things happen. Two others would join the mission with Butch and Beverly. George Kofer, a self-described hippie carpenter turned environmental activist with the Save Barton Creek Association, and Ted Sith, a savvy, cerebral, and well-connected advocate for public open space.
Beverly Griffith invited me and Ted Sith and Butch Smith, and so she got us together to talk about this idea of let's preserve some land. Ted brought to the table that knowledge of what it took statutorily to accomplish land conservation. But then he also knew how to work within the city bureaucracy.
Butch Smith was the insider of our group. He knew Barton Creek watershed backwards and forwards and up and down. So we all added from different aspects of advocacy to the effort.
A strategy began to develop on how we would proceed with saving Barton Creek.
The entire Barton Creek watershed spanned 30 miles from Austin to Dripping Springs. At this time, only a narrow stretch along the creek bed closest to Austin was owned by the city. Yet this area was vital because water flowing across this segment of Barton Creek recharged the aquifer below.
To To save the water, we've got to save the land. We cannot regulate our way into perpetual protection of the creek and springs. We had to do more than that. We had to invest in getting some land.
Beverly, Butch, George, and Ted understood that without protection, additional development along Barton Creek was inevitable, and that environmental regulations were no match against Austin's growth machine.
The land upstream from Barton Springs that goes into the hill country and was all privately owned in 1990.
And that meant that it could be sold and developed at any time.
To have this incredible oasis in the middle of the city, we needed to get the land around it to protect it.
There was no question about making a run at buying that land. We had to.
As their meeting drew to a close, the goal came into focus. Beverly, Butch, George, and Ted resolved to buy this land, vastly expanding the city's green space, protecting the delicate ecosystem, while preserving an unparalleled nature experience for the people of Austin. They would call it the Barton Creek Wilderness Park. A series of hurdles would stand in their way, not the least of which was a limited timeline before bulldozers rolled over the very land they hoped to save. But to convince the city to invest in the land, they needed to make a case for the area's ecological value. They would need more than passion. They would need proof.
We needed data. We needed information.
We knew from the very beginning that we needed a heavy hitter. Not just city staff, not just Save Market Creek Association, local people.
As luck would have it, the National Park Service invited the city to apply for a competitive grant that, if awarded, would provide both the data and credibility needed to advance the Wilderness Park vision.
The Parks Department entered into a contest, a national contest.
Butch Smith was able to write that grant because he knew so much about Barton Creek and the Barton Creek watershed.
Officials from the National Park Service came to Austin to judge for themselves whether or not Barton Creek was worthy of support.
We picked them up. We drove them out to Barton Creek, and it was zippity-doo-dah. It was absolutely Walt Disney. It was absolutely scripted. And those guys were really moved and impressed. We won with Barton Creek and Barton Springs.
The unique character of Barton Creek won over the National Park Service, locking in the funding for an in-depth survey and the data so urgently needed. But the wheels of bureaucracy turned slowly. Weeks turned into months as Wilderness Park advocates waited for grant money to be released. After 6 months, Butch wasn't willing to wait any longer. He invited back his National Park Service contacts to jumpstart the project.
He was able to really work behind the scenes in a very subtle fashion.
Subtle or not, word of his efforts got out fast.
Barton Creek could someday become an environmentally protected area.
The city of Austin is now exploring ways to preserve one of Austin's most sensitive waterways.
You really get a feel for, in being close to a city, it's something pretty special.
Butch was able to bring in the players necessary to get this thing moving. He had a greater understanding of the potential dangers that were going on with all of the upstream development.
Butch knew any delay in finalizing the National Park Service partnership meant that the land could be developed at any time. Finally, a full year after winning the grant, Butch would applaud from the sidelines as Beverly and other city and National Park Service dignitaries marked the official start of the study.
Support of the National Park Service gave this whole concept legitimacy. Beverly really was very happy.
This Barton Creek study by the National Park Service is an incredible opportunity. You'll be extremely proud.
But success was far from guaranteed. Though Mayor Bruce Todd took center stage at the event, Beverly would soon learn that he had plans of his own that would jeopardize the creation of the Wilderness Park. Despite future obstacles, soon after the official ceremony, the National Park Service team set out to gather the data necessary to justify one of the most ambitious parkland purchases in Austin's history.
I started with the National Park Service in the fall of '91. I was an intern on that program. Butch described my role in the project, which primarily was creating these maps, and this again was long before computer graphics, so this was starting with big topographic maps of the area.
Michelle Bertauger would spend the next 9 months crisscrossing the Barton Creek watershed in the areas in and adjacent to the city of Austin.
I primarily worked with Butch. Butch would often come out with me. Sometimes there may be somebody from Department of Fish and Wildlife or an ornithologist, different people helping me identify the different features on those maps. This giant project had so many different people involved in it. And I had to take those topographic maps, then take these mylar pieces, putting the layers on for the vegetation layer, the geology, a wildlife layer, hydrology.
Pile all those sheets on top of each other, and the darker an area is the most important land to conserve.
Wilderness Park advocates zeroed in on the darkest areas on the map, nearly 1,000 acres adjacent to the existing greenbelt, which was both the most environmentally sensitive and at risk of immediate development.
So the way to go was to buy the land from Mopac to the Lost Creek subdivision. That became the goal.
With new scientific evidence to validate their vision, Beverly, Butch, George, and Ted could now move the park plan forward. Beverly's dedication to creating the Wilderness Park did not eclipse her commitment as Parks Board Chair to addressing the needs of the community as a whole.
There were parks all over this city who had needs that were not being met because there had not been a capital improvements bundleation for years.
Moved by public pleas for improvements, Beverly and Parks Director Manuel Molinado urged the city to hold a bond election as soon as possible. Their recommendations included the most pressing needs of Austin citizens. The Barton Creek Wilderness Park was among their top priorities.
Beverly, as Parks Board Chair, she was the loud champion that was saying to council, we got to do this. And she was a citizen volunteer.
Beverly Griffith.
Mayor, council members, Dr. Barnett, what I'd like to offer is a little timeline, a little chronology, how we got.
People respected her. She had credibility, but she was, at some point, I think, got a little pushy for some of the staff's, senior staff's positions.
I was contacted by the city manager who informed me that it was not my role as Parks Chair to start bond elections and to raise unrealistic expectations among the citizens. And I said, yes, ma'am.
Whether or not Beverly got admonished or asked to stand down, I was not in the room, but it didn't stop her.
Beverly was determined to have the Wilderness Park included in the next bond election. But to secure a place on the ballot, it needed a city council sponsor.
I took that National Park Service study to every city council person. And in a week or two, I got nothing back. No comment. It was confusing. It was confusing because I hadn't heard about the competing plan.
Mayor Bruce Todd was gathering support to fund another land acquisition project called the Balcones Canyonlands Habitat Conservation Plan.
That was a different focus. That was purely on habitat, acquire habitat where endangered species live. And that's different from enlarging a recreational area. The idea of money for Barton Creek Wilderness Park was seen as a threat because voters might vote for one, not both.
I went back to the offices to City Hall. I was standing in the middle of the hall, being dazed and confused by no response, and Louise Epstein came out of her office and said, "What are you doing here?" "Well, I have this National Park Service study that says in order to save Barton Creek and Barton Springs, we have to save this land, so we have to do a bond election and buy the land." And she said, "Come in my office."
We took her to Barton Creek to show her exactly what we were trying to accomplish and the importance of it. It's the same impression everybody has. Wow, look at this. I can't believe this is not developed. You know, what can we do to save it?
It hit her, something that she could be supportive of that would make a big contribution to the city.
Louise's decision to back the Wilderness Park may have been motivated by more than her love of the outdoors.
She was going to be the heroine, and she was also going to stop the plan to buy the land for the endangered species, championed by Bruce Todd, who she was at odds with. She saw a way for herself to be the champion of Barton Creek and Barton Springs. Louise Epstein.
People were surprised that she would be the biggest proponent for an environmental effort. She was more associated with the development community.
During her pre-election campaign, environmentalists like George Kofer felt encouraged that they may have an ally in Louise Epstein. Soon after being elected, however, her voting record alarmed many in environmental circles.
Many environmentalists voted for her, believing that she would support and do all she could to fight for the strongest protections for Barton Creek and Barton Springs and our water supply.
Aligning efforts with Louise Epstein raised suspicion among some in environmental circles. But Wilderness Park advocates had no choice if they wanted to move forward.
The item on the agenda before you, council members.
As Louise worked to sway a divided city council, Beverly and her allies conferred quietly near the dais.
The way for us to preserve this land and to make it a part of our heritage and our children's heritage is to buy it. It is up to us what we see there. Are we going to see paved roads, office buildings, residences, apartment complexes, or are we going to see a wilderness park? It's our choice.
I think that the wording in this resolution is premature, and I would like for our boards and commissions to begin building consensus on this idea.
I'd be perfectly willing to get their input prior to us developing the final ballot language. But this resolution is a resolution of intent to give the voters an opportunity to vote.
I don't think that we're ready to take this step at this juncture.
Mayor Todd relied on Councilmember Garcia to help delay the Wilderness Park proposal, hoping to avoid competition between the two land acquisition projects in the upcoming bond election.
I think it is patently clear what is going on here. Individuals who did not have the foresight to listen carefully to our Parks and Recreation Department, who presented this proposal individually and several at a time to, I believe, every single council member. Not a single council member thought it was worthy. They're willing to stall and drip desert lizard tears because they're not gonna get credit for starting the first step to developing the Barton Creek Wilderness Park.
We want you to get the credit. If you want to, we'll rename this the Louise Epstein Wilderness Park, if that's what you want.
Beverly Griffith, I thank you for bringing these to my attention. I just wonder why nobody else bothered to act on this item before today.
4 of the 7 council members had to vote yes for the Barton Creek Wilderness Park to earn a place on the ballot. Louise's council allies pushed the Wilderness Park forward, but the next challenge was already at hand. The Wilderness Park would now have to compete with other city priorities in order to be included in the final bond package.
How much are you willing to pay to repair our streets, protect Barton Creek, and keep Austin youths out of gangs?
Those may be questions you'll be answering in a bond election. News 36's Marla Bean tells us Austin doesn't have enough money to cover all its needs.
How much money in bonds are we willing to let the city council spend?
That the voters will approve a bond election that they feel is a reasonable proposal for needed projects, and that's what we're beginning to decide.
Citizens packed the council chambers to make their voices heard, demanding that their pressing needs rise to the top of the bond priorities.
Okay, the next 2 speakers.
There were parks which hadn't been sitting idle and not developed for decades.
We need fields with restrooms. We need fields with water. We need fields with light.
In general, the resources usually would tend to go to West Austin. East Austin would be taken care of, but not at the same level. They needed a lot of resources, and they weren't getting the resources.
Based on the way that the priorities are structured, I can't understand why a lot of things are more important than these kids sitting right here and all the black kids that are not here from East Austin.
I'm here to urge you to adopt a balanced bond package that addresses the needs of the inner city and the need to save Barton Springs and the Edwards Aquifer by a major land acquisition in the Barton Creek watershed.
In my opinion, the only way to get to doing these inner city projects that most of these citizens have been here before you to ask for is you're going to have to cut the Wilderness Park acquisition funds.
Don't pit the East against the West or the North against the South. For God's sake, use your common sense and give us the things that we need.
After countless hours of impassioned community testimony, haggling amongst themselves, and number crunching by the city manager, in June of 1992, the Austin City Council voted to put all of the items on the ballot and let the voters decide for themselves at the polls.
Once the council put the bond propositions together, which was roughly 60 days before early voting started, bell rung, the race had started.
The election in August of 1992 would be the culmination of 2 years of intense engagement by the community to find a way to protect what remained of Austin's natural heritage along Barton Creek and at Barton Springs.
There were these 3 major environmental public policy issues coming to a vote in August of 1992. There were concerns that there would be competition between them in voters' bonds.
Front and center on the ballot would be the Save Our Springs Ordinance, a citizen-initiated water quality ordinance, much more restrictive than the one the City Council had been willing to pass. The Save Our Springs Coalition was a well-organized grassroots effort, but some in the organization were openly hostile to the Wilderness Park proposition, resolving not to promote the bond to their wide network of supporters.
We have also seen concern about our environment.
Second on the ballot, and with broad public support, was the mayor's Balcones Canyonlands Habitat Conservation Bond, Proposition 10. Its position just above the Barton Creek Wilderness Park, Proposition 11, assured that voters would see it first. Wilderness Park advocates took an inclusive approach, promoting all of the environmental initiatives appearing on the ballot.
Our strategy, simple as it was we're for everything.
A lot of energy went into getting the word out, and keep in mind, we didn't have social media then. We had fax networks, we had phone trees where people would just start calling people.
Being a city employee, it's known you're not supposed to be an advocate. And I knew that my part was going to be limited, whereas the other partners, Ted and Beverly and George, could go out and lobby like hell for the project, which they did. I mean, they were everywhere in the community, constantly out there promoting and selling the idea.
Giant urban wilderness park that is a dream could give Austin a very unique selling proposition to the rest of the world.
What I was doing on a day-to-day basis was largely going to organization meetings and speaking about the bonds.
My role was putting on events. We had connections to the music community in Austin, a lot of fundraising to pay for all this effort that was necessary to have an election. We had to go out and get the voters to the polls.
Voters are turning out to the polls in record numbers. Thousands of people cast their ballots, taking election judges and volunteers by surprise. Officials say it's one of the largest voter turnouts in the city's history. Voters who came to beat long lines were shocked when they got there.
I was tense. I'm always tense before an election.
On this election night, the votes are nearly all counted, and it appears that the Save Our Springs ordinance has won the approval of Austin voters. Also getting the nod were plans to spend money on a regional conservation plan and to expand the Barton Creek Greenbelt by creating a wilderness park.
It felt really good. I was elated.
When everything passed that night, it was just very fulfilling and brought a really warm feeling to my heart.
Something about parks in Austin is, if you can get your parks bonds on the ballot, they will pass.
Election night was a really happy night, but the next morning was, how do we get this land bought? While voters had authorized $20 million, that wasn't money that the city had in a checking account. It was the authorization to sell bonds.
But the bonds aren't sold at the same time. They're sold this year, and this year.
Even though voters had given the thumbs up for the Barton Creek Wilderness Park, it could take years for the city council to authorize the bonds and release the money to buy the land. This was the pitfall that citizens faced in the 1970s, when hundreds of Austinites organized, calling on the city to purchase large tracts of private land along Barton Creek. This public statement, printed in the local paper and signed by some of the city's most influential voices, urged council members to buy land to create a wilderness park. The concept found support from the council, but the city struggled to negotiate the many land deals in the expansive area earmarked for the park. 15 years later, the city had only managed to buy a narrow path hugging the bed of the creek, a quarter of what citizens had envisioned. On the parcels they were unable to acquire, houses and apartments materialized, replacing the pristine views from Barton Creek. The Barton Creek Greenbelt finally opened in 1985, but it was just a fraction of the parkland that citizens had been pushing for. By 1992, Beverly, Butch, George, and Ted knew that their effort might be the last chance to make any sort of wilderness park a reality for the citizens of Austin.
Conceptually, I was in total support of it. Honestly, didn't think it was ever going to become a reality.
Large-scale land acquisition is something that's only accomplished when you have the right collection of players, skills, and resources coming together at exactly the right moment. And I think the reason why earlier efforts didn't manifest was because that collection of skills and resources weren't there yet. And in some ways, it's always miraculous when they do come together.
It was miraculous then that at this critical moment, Butch would happen to cross paths with someone who could sidestep the city's red tape and buy the land for the Barton Creek Wilderness Park quickly.
Butch Smith sat down by a gentleman he did not know, and he said, "Hi, I'm from Austin. Who are you?" And the guy said, "I'm Ted Harrison with the Trust for Public Land." And Butch said, "What do you do?" "I help cities buy and protect land for conservation and public recreation."
I said, "I think I need to get to know you." We were kindred spirits. I knew that it's like that.
Butch, he just had a very thoughtful and respectful way of speaking about his love of park making and how much he felt it was of critical importance to the quality of life in the community of Austin.
Trust for Public Land, they can go in and they can help city secure a property, and they may front upfront money to actually buy it or hold it until funding could come through the city. The city would, in essence, buy the property back.
Finding a partner like the Trust for Public Land had the potential to change the trajectory of Austin's future, positioning it to preserve the creek and springs and build on its long-held vision of becoming a true park city. The stakes had never been higher.
This land was at tremendous risk. It had been planned and platted, and the developers who were involved in properties that edged the watershed had aspirations for very significant projects.
But in an unexpected turn of events, a crippling downturn in the economy halted numerous projects.
We had a local crash in property values. There were buildings downtown that were called see-throughs because they were empty and you could see all the way through them. And so that dropped the value of land.
When the savings and loan crisis came on in the late 80s and early 90s, it crushed the vision and hopes of those developers, but created a unique opportunity for the community to move forward with a plan to acquire those properties at a very significant discount.
I was in the frying pan, sizzling in the oil. I just was trying to get enough money out of my deal to pay my investors back. I was kind of a bit player, but I did own the land that went from Loop 360 down to Barton Creek.
Even for those landowners who had the money to proceed with their developments, the newly passed Save Our Springs ordinance introduced additional risk.
Don Castleberry bought this 11-acre tract of land in 1981. He says he'd like to develop or sell the land, but he says he can't find any interested investors. They're being scared away, he says, by land restrictions proposed in the SOS initiative.
It's just simply not a good investment anymore. Last year, I paid $50,000 tax on a piece of property that I can't do anything with.
It's a dilemma facing many landowners in the area.
I could sympathize with the environmental movement that wanted all this to be preserved, and I was trying to navigate myself through these turbulent waters to not get my canoe sucked over the waterfall and die.
This was an opportunity that would allow a very significant greenway to be purchased and protected, as perhaps the city never had an opportunity before.
With the small window of opportunity at hand, Ted Harrison and Ted Siff would take advantage of this rare slowdown in Austin's growth, tackling the complex effort of negotiating and closing Barton Creek land deals.
Ted and I really became a team. His knowledge and set of relationships in Austin was something that I didn't have. What impressed me about Ted Siff was his ability to work with a broad range of actors across the community.
Thank you very much, Mr. Siff.
Part of the challenge and opportunity of creating the Barton Creek Wilderness Park was figuring out exactly how to assemble these 1,000 acres.
There were numerous tracts that were needed if the park was to become a reality. Each parcel would require a separate deal.
If we want to buy a greenbelt, you have to have a continuous greenbelt. You can't have missing links in a greenbelt. So you have to go in a certain order, upstream.
Some of those properties were owned by developers, some were owned by banks, some were owned by individuals that had decades of relationship with those properties. We called them legacy landowners. The Gaines Ranch was considered a keystone property. It was absolutely essential if the Wilderness Park was going to be what had been promised in the bond election. Gaines Ranch had to be a part of this.
Taylor Gaines' family has been running cattle on their land in the Barton Creek watershed since 1933. Jimmy's parents say they would like to sell their land and retire, but they haven't been able to because of development restrictions on their land in the Barton Creek watershed.
Jimmy Gaines had brought several development plans to the Planning Commission and to the Planning Department, and they had been rejected. Jimmy Gaines was not feeling affectionate towards the city of Austin.
So, hi, I'm from the city and I'm here to help you was not a persuasive approach. But, hi, I'm from the Trust for Public Land, I can pay you cash, worked to our advantage.
Trust for Public Land could play the role of choreographer or conductor of that land acquisition program and let the Parks Department and the city in general be on the sidelines.
The Gaines property comprised over 2/3 of all the land that was needed to create the Barton Creek Wilderness Park. But Jimmy Gaines was not convinced that now was the time to sell.
Jimmy Gaines was holding out for a top dollar value for his property that was really now worth 30 or 40% of X.
Beverly was a prominent businesswoman in the community in addition to her volunteer role as Parks Board Chair. As a member of the exclusive Headliners Club, she orchestrated the next move.
Beverly Griffith invited Jimmy Gaines to the Headliners Club for lunch.
It's very formal, white tablecloths and waiters running around. And Jimmy, who is a regular guy, he's a person of the land. The venue felt a little out of place for him. Coming there with Jimmy, I think, was designed to impress upon him both the seriousness and level of investment that leaders in the community were ready to make in him and their family and the property that they had so long stewarded. Our conversation took a while to really get going.
It was just relationship building. We learned the history of the Gaines families, what Jimmy liked to do, including golf and other things.
Ted Siff thought this is going nowhere. I'm going back to the office. I was going to stay as long as they did and try and get it back on track.
And ultimately, between the two of us, I can't remember who pushed forward with Jimmy, this is the moment. And that he needed to make a decision fairly quickly as to whether he was going to be part of the program or take the risk of waiting for the market to come back. Time is running out. The money's going to be spent, and his family's property is going to be left on the sideline.
Jimmy Gaines looks out this big picture window and says nothing for an interminable length of time. Then Jimmy Gaines turns around to Ted Harrison and says, "Are you going to buy my ranch?" And Ted Harrison said, "Yes."
We struck the outline of a deal in that luncheon, and then he and I worked separately over the course of the next 60 days or so to put an agreement together that gave Trust for Public Land and the city an opportunity to purchase that Keystone property.
The Gaines property would be the largest of many deals that were struck to preserve this land, eventually adding close to 1,000 acres, transforming the original Barton Creek Greenbelt into a major metropolitan park for the people of Austin forever.
Having those green spaces is what has really brought Austin to become such a valuable place to live.
What gives me pleasure is to show people the park. It makes its own statement.
I can remember I was riding with my daughter, my young daughter, and we were going over a flyover where you can actually look out and you can see all the green of the Barton Creek Wilderness Park. And she sort of knew what my profession was, but she saw that and she says, "Dad, now I think I understand what you do." That's mission accomplished right there, but that has to continue.
The Barton Creek Wilderness Park, that 1,000-acre wilderness park that too many of us take for granted, that was a huge undertaking of 23 real estate transactions to put together this 1,000-acre park. That was a beautiful moment.
While there were certainly parks in Austin before 1992 and a lot of park advocacy over the years, the election in '92 was a pivotal point in Austin's park history.
If you never give up, people can make a difference. Doesn't seem like it should take 50 years, but that legacy makes me feel really good that I got to be a part of something that forever will be preserved.
The fact that it's actually happened is a miraculous thing, driven by the people of Austin, conviction that we have to save the creek and the springs and other environmental resources. Keep your eyes on the prize, and the details will come together.
For Beverly, Ted, George, and Butch, the Wilderness Park marked the beginning of a lifelong commitment to creating a greener, more connected Austin, a city with access to open space and, in turn, the restorative power of nature.